for me, focusing on the words brings me into the song and takes me out of myself. I have a job to do. I'm serving the song and I remember why I wrote the song. And if I'm remembering that, then I'm making an emotional connection with what I felt like when I was writing that song and where that came from. Why am I sharing it with anyone?
You're listening to Artistry with Heart, a musician's wellness podcast. I'm Stephanie Lynn Bernards. On today's episode, we're joined by Rachel Taylor Brown, a singer-songwriter and pianist from Portland, Oregon, whose music reflects a love-hate relationship with humanity and persistent awe at the beauty and horror in the world. She's been interviewed by the American novelist Rick Moody for his column on The Rumpus and featured in the critically praised book by the late, great Scott Miller, Music, What Happened? Her most recent album, Run Tiny Human, premiered on Pop Matters and was featured on Bandcamp as an essential release. And her band features musicians like Ben Lansford of Wonderly, Jeff Langston of Anthony and the Johnsons, solo artists Lee Marble, and John Stewart of The Sort Ofs. Rachel, I'm so stoked to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Your music reflects a poignant love-hate relationship with humanity, and it captures that sweet and sour thing in a song so effectively. There's such a depth in your music, Rachel, that clearly has so many layers of complexity to it, and I'm really excited to get into a few of those layers later on in this conversation. So I know we're going to get into all of your musical endeavors here in a moment, but before we do, can we just go behind the scenes for a moment and hear about where your musical journey began? I read that you started piano when you were 6. Is that right?
I did start playing piano much younger, but just by ear and picking things up. I had a older sibling, my brother Jeff, who's passed now. He died in I think 1996 of a brain tumor, or actually the treatment for the brain tumor. But he was a marvelous musician, and he's 9 years older than I, and so he would get on the piano and he would play these incredible things, and I loved him to death, and I loved what he played, and I used to creep up to the piano, see, like after he left and then left the bench empty, and it was still warm, and the keys were still warm and had the magic I thought in them, and I would try to play the piano after he did, and it wasn't anything like my fantasy. What I wanted. I wanted to be able to just simply play like Jeff. But I started picking things out by ear really young. I think I started plucking around because my grandmother had a piano at about 2 years old, and she would have each of us kids over to her house one at a time. And I remember being enthralled with the piano, which wound up being the piano I played on all my life growing up. I started lessons officially at 6, and it was like being put in a harness. I really struggled against it because I learned things by ear and I played when I wanted to play and I played what I wanted to play. And getting into lessons, I'm afraid I kind of cheated. I would have my teacher play the thing for me and then I hear it and learn it by ear, and kind of was slow in gaining the sight reading, slower than I had to be in gaining the sight reading because of that. But then when I went on into high school, I had a choir teacher who sort of forced us all to learn to sight read. And so that's when I really picked up on it, but really mainly playing by ear most of my life.
I think that's incredible. I've always heard people say that they think it's cheating when they can pick music up without having to read the notation. And I kind of don't get where that voice comes from, because I think that it's not how you get there, it's that you get there. And we need musicians to create art. However, you get to that art is kind of an individual process. I teach piano, and I know a lot of my students have said when they aren't reading music, oh, I'm just like cheating if I don't read the music. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. I think that maybe aren't using a resource that could potentially be helpful to you if that's the way your brain works. But if it's not, then maybe it doesn't need to be front and center, So I just wanted to speak to that because I don't think that it's necessary to follow one track and do the thing that everybody says, because as we'll find out later on in this conversation, you've done a whole lot of really amazing things as a musician and as an artist, right? So, not necessary for you to have followed the routes of your childhood piano teachers.
Well, you sound like my favorite professor who I met in college, who was a music theory teacher, wonderful violinist, but also taught ear training. And ear training was my class.
Mm.
I owned that class. That ear training was a breeze for me. And I remember expressing the same thing to him that I did to you, in the sort of cheating. And I'm not one of the real musicians here who came in with 4 years of high school theory and, lots of strong sight reading skills and things. And he said, "Oh, you should be very glad that you developed your ear so young, and that's something that's gonna take you, stand you in good stead through your life as a musician, and it's not something to apologize for, or feel like you're cheating on or being embarrassed about." So, I admired him a lot.
I think that's great, and I just really think artists need to hear that because there is all these weird theories out there about what it means to be a musician. So
Mhm.
anyway, so fast
That's
forward,
true.
right? You fast forward, you graduate from the University of Oregon School of Music and become a soprano veteran of Portland. So with classical groups such as Capella Romana, Portland Baroque
Mhm.
Orchestra, Trinity Consort, and Seattle's Tudor Choir, is that right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Cool. So say more about your work with these groups, how you got into them a little bit.
Well, talking about imposter syndrome, I got into singing seriously, classically pretty late in high school. And I studied with a wonderful teacher for about a year and entered a couple contests and then wound up deciding, well, I want to be a vocal major. I want to go to college for music. But when I went down to school, I did. I mean, same thing with the feeling apologetic about, oh, my sight reading isn't good enough. I had natural ability, but I was around a lot of really gifted with natural ability people who also had the other side of the equation. They were grounded in theory. They had very strong sight reading skills. And so I think my reaction to that and also my own personal pathology, I kind of just breezed as though I didn't care, over things. I wouldn't practice for auditions. I sort of sabotaged myself. I prepared to fail. And instead, more often than not, when I would succeed, and then that would freak me out even more if I won an award or if I was offered a solo or things like that, or I got into this or that ensemble that I wanted to get into. But it created a distance between me, I think, and music. It created a distance between me and my audience. It created a distance. I couldn't fully be there because I didn't fully believe in what I had and what I was doing. I didn't feel like I really knew what I was doing. So I'm a little sad looking back. I had a great opportunity, so many great opportunities in college. I did appreciate them, but I didn't feel it. I wish I'd felt it a little more and been a little more forgiving of myself too, and just enjoyed it. But with Capella Romana, my friend Alex, who's the director and the founder of that group, who's gosh, now I don't know if he's Oxford or Cambridge or whatever, but he's become kind of this leading world authority in Byzantine music and chant. He just contacted me once I was back in town after I'd been living back east for 4 years. My husband was going through residency on the East Coast, and so we were there for 4 years, and I came back, and Alex gave me a call and said, "Hey," I think Capella had started up a year before that and said, "I want you to come in and sing with us if you will," and I did, and it was another experience of, these people are amazing, and what am I doing here kind of thing. I sweated every one of those concerts, literally they were such challenges. We would get music to paste into our folders 10 minutes before the concert. The fragments. Your folder was just this folder full of fragments. The folders were always like 20 pounds heavy because our concerts were really long to begin with. Everything's in Greek and Russian multi-part pieces too that Alex had dug out of the archives somewhere in Russia. And we were the first one performing them in 1 million years and things like that. And
Right.
so it really fed me in that it was a challenge that I liked. But yeah, it's another thing where I wish I'd just allowed myself to enjoy it more. But it was hard work. So it was a little hard to enjoy. It was a very challenging choir to be in.
And you
And
were a
then the other
soprano. You were a soprano for all these groups.
soprano, I guess evenly divided between first soprano and second soprano. So the really high stuff and the slightly lower, which I've come to like more and more as I age. The other jobs sort of followed, once you're singing with a group in town and you're singing with a lot of the same singers. Singers
Uh-huh.
tend to pass around singing jobs through word of mouth and tell conductors, "Oh, this is a good soprano, this is a good bass, this is a good whomever." So I wound up in those other groups that you mentioned through touring with some of the people and just, your name getting out there.
Right. And then you also toured extensively and recorded as a band member in both the Sort ofs and Fear of Heights. And
Mhm.
you've collaborated extensively with previous guest Ben Lansford. Shout out to him.
Yes,
He is so amazing. And
he
also
is.
Jim Brunberg, which hopefully will be a future guest, also so amazing.
Oh, he would be a great guest. He
Mhm.
is, yeah, he and Ben do wonderful, well, they're together in Wonderly doing work, and they also compose for anything and everything, podcasts, movies, television shows. They're, like, super good at working together. I'm not so good at working with other people. So I admire that trait,
You got to find
but
the right fit, though, too. I think that,
I think that's true.
they are an amazing fit and they create some awesome shit.
Yeah, they really do.
They really do.
Yeah.
So for listeners who haven't heard these groups and these musicians, what genre are they, and how did that segue into being who you are today and touring with these bands that are not, as they say, classical groups?
There was no rhyme or reason to it. Sort of like when I was growing up, I started out singing pop and rock. My brothers had rock bands. And then, like I told you, later in high school, got into the classical singing and in school choirs, started learning pieces by, I'm not using, classical in the umbrella term,
Hmm.
composers and things like that. I would sneak into practice rooms. I was doing my own music when I was in music school too. What happened was that I started writing songs. I've been writing songs all my life, but I started taking it more seriously probably in my mid 20s. My dear husband got me this 4-track recorder, and it was the sweetest gift because I was recording on these little handheld recorders and going back and forth and back and forth, and so that you could track, multi-track.
Uh-huh.
And when you do that, it just gets faster and faster and everything gets higher and higher and higher. So it was pretty amusing. But I worked out how to use this Tascam Porta 05 recorder that my husband got me. And that made me start to take myself as a composer, as a songwriter more seriously at that time. Then when we moved back home, I got back into the classical stuff, but I was working on my songs and I was working on my songs. And we had John Huckfeld, who's a bass player in Portland, a really fine bass player and songwriter too. His day job was as a house painter. And he came to our house and he was painting a house, and I was working on my songs inside the house. And he heard me working on my songs and he said, very kindly, he said, I have a friend who records. Do you have a tape or anything that I could give him? And I said, sure. And so he gave my tape to Larry Schaefer, who was the first person I ever recorded with. And he had a studio in his house. He was extraordinarily generous. And one of these, like Ben, multi instrumentalist, could play especially the Hammond organ amazingly.
Hmm.
But he played stringed instruments, he played everything. And so I recorded my first CD with him. I mean, we both just did it. And that's how I got into beginning to do my music as opposed to just the classical music. That was the first step out the door with that. And then John helped me put together a band too after that album was coming out so that we could support it and everything. But it was all new to me. I mean, it was mind blowingly new. I didn't know what to do in that genre. So that's how I got a little press and was doing quite a lot of gigs at that time of my own music. And that's how I met Chris, whose bands were the Fair Heights and the Sort ofs, and John Stewart.
Yeah, and like your music has been described on All Music as quirky alt pop that merges a dark blend of chamber music with an almost glam tinged arena rock ambiance, all driven by eccentric lyrics that tackle difficult and often unpleasant subjects, leading one critic to label your style as creep rock. Okay, so that is the most creative description of any genre I think I've ever read slash heard. Can you unpack this description? Does it ring true for you? Is this you? Was this somebody just writing about you? Can you talk about your genre, your music?
I was really pleased. I don't know that person who writes for All Music, and I'm sorry I'm forgetting his name, but he took it upon himself. I mean, I went to All Music one day and there I was, and there was that nice bio written up for me. And I thought, you know what? That's really not bad. And that was years and years ago now. And I think, yeah, it kind of has held up. The word quirky, fortunately, has gone out of style. I've never been super crazy about the word quirky.
I know it feels like it's supposed to be a compliment.
At the time he wrote that, it was not. Corky was used quite a lot for Lilith Fair players,
Mm,
and I'm not saying Lilith Fair scornfully. I love all of those women that played them. That was sort of the manic pixie dream girl time,
mhm,
Maybe it still is the manic pixie dream girl time where they like to categorize all female musicians as that.
mhm.
Um, but I don't think he was using it in a bad way necessarily because of when that was written. Now I agree with you. That word definitely is loaded
Yeah.
now. But yeah,
Steve
apart from
Leggett, by the way. It's
that's
the
it.
Steve,
Yes. Thank you,
yes.
Steve Leggett. You were extraordinarily kind to me. But yeah, I think it's pretty on. It talks about my arena rock pretensions, which is what I call it. I have that in me where some things I just want to be big.
Yep.
And it's hilarious to imagine me in an arena rocking, but I like really big things like that. I do
Mhm.
write about difficult subjects, but usually put them to a poppy beat.
Love
Not
that.
always. And a local critic, not meaning to be complimentary, just my music is creep rock once or creep pop. And it stung at the time. And then pretty quickly I grew to like the term. And I
I
thought,
heard that and I was like, "That is such a cool description." Like,
yeah. And it did wind up popping up in things, and it's weird because I don't know how. I don't think I had quoted her in any of my materials, but it got seen. It was kind of a publication that was at least locally read quite a bit. So I think that it kind of was on the radar and he picked it up and I don't mind. I really didn't mind when I saw it the first time and I like the term like you said now.
it's kind of funny how that works. Like, sometimes even initially, if people say things and they aren't necessarily meant to uplift us, we can definitely, like, turn it into, right, a creative way of looking at ourselves in a positive light if we choose. I guess it's like perspective, right? But, I think that, yeah, initially, I can see how that would have stung, and now it's like, "Oh, wow," like, I'm gonna just, like, whatever, take what I like and leave the rest, wear it as a badge of honor, I don't know, but anyways, I didn't really get anything creepy out of your music when I was listening to it, just FYI. I thought it was so, like, deep and touching while also somehow, like, buoyant and, just like you said, poppy. And there's a quote from NPR's Robin Hilton, I think. And I wanted to just like read it and then kind of have you maybe unpack it because I feel like maybe it speaks to like your why behind music and kind of like what is driving these pieces. And he said, Brown has a gift for channeling her inner demons into a mesmerizing world of sound. So I wanted to just have you unpack this for us. With all these descriptor words about your music, I kind of want to hear, is this music a channel for your inner world?
Definitely. Yeah. That was an accurate and an interesting and nice thing, I think. Nice way for him to put it.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful when they featured I think he did Meta in Madagascar on that. But
Oh,
yeah, that one's directly about my world. Not all of my songs are that directly autobiographical or autobiographical at all, but that was about my great aunt Meta. But yeah, even if I'm not writing obviously autobiographically, every song, everything that I write is informed by what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling and what's going through me at any particular time that I'm putting together an album or making music. I'm not putting together an album. I'm just writing songs and then the albums sort of come together. My albums are like diaries or something. And they're not
mhm.
diaries. I don't want to be saying that because they're not. Not everything I write about is directly autobiographical, but at least the feel of it I kind of get a hit from with albums that of how I was feeling during the time that I was writing the songs for that album. So yeah, working out my inner demons. I've definitely done that. I've definitely done that with some of the songs, some more obviously than others. It's
Yeah.
therapeutic, yes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was rocking out to your album Run Tiny Human last night when I was working on our interview notes, and
Oh,
that album was premiered on Pop Matters, right? And was featured
mhm.
on Bandcamp as an essential release. So
Yeah, that was exciting.
yeah, yeah, listeners definitely check it out. It's such a killer vibe. It's like deep and touching while also kind of melancholy it's just so rich. And so I'm
Thank you.
curious, was the backstory of this album a little bit like what you were saying earlier about autobiographically, it was in touch with where you were at that point in your life? Was there a song in it that really just resonated deeply with you at that time that you feel like might be worth sharing about? If not, no worries.
I think of that album in particular as being more outward focused as far as what was happening in the world and in tiers, like the universe, then down to our planet, to the world, and then down to my state and my community that I was living in. Just during the time that I was writing that album, change has been speeding up since I guess the advent of, well, I guess you could say the advent of the laptop, but the advent of the smartphone in
Mm.
particular, change has just been so rapid over the last many years. And it's like every year it feels like it's exponentially more. Human beings aren't capable of adapting to the kind of change we've been going through, I don't think. So when I was writing those songs, that's a lot of what I was thinking about was rapid change. And how are we handling it? Can we handle it? My conclusion was we're not handling it very well. All the stuff everyone's thinking about. I'm sure everything I'm thinking about right now that could come out on the next album is not going to be anything original. It's everything everybody's thinking about right
Mhm.
now. I mean, we're just in times that sort of can tie you up and preoccupy you to a state of rigid paralysis. You're just I have to stop and remind myself to breathe sometimes because I don't even know I'm holding my breath and pressing my tongue to the roof of my mouth and clenching my jaw. It's just that state's sort of always there with me now. And I try to focus on the beauty of the earth and of the things around me and the people that I love and the many, 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 many good things that I have, but that it's like a miasma. It's like this little cloud that's there of like, what's gonna happen? What's going on?
I know.
Just all that rapid change.
I know. And you mentioned like these things that are happening in our world do really feel paralyzing. And I think that that's the beauty of music is that, I teach body mapping and I talk about it frequently in my episodes. And it's basically, a form of somatic education that teaches musicians how to move efficiently and to promote playing more freely and prevent
Oh,
injury. And
wow.
it's really great stuff, but the foundational, like, method that we teach to start is that music is movement, right? Like, m music moves, like, music is all about training movement and, feeling like that you are moving freely and buoyantly,
Yeah.
and I kind of feel like the antidote to the paralysis of the things that happen to us in life is the movement that music can provide, and I think it's interesting, that's why I feel like these conversations are so important is because I feel like sometimes we feel paralyzed in creating and expressing our art, right? It's like we kinda carry
Mhm.
that paralyzed feeling from the outside world into our art because we're kind of using the same, like, measuring stick, and we're kinda using the same way of creating that we feel like we need to be acting in the world. And I think the way that you're saying, like the way you write and the way I think we all what all draws us to music that we all want to be doing is express freely and express in this way that is allowing us to like let go of the chains. I feel like that this paralyzing sort of state of affairs in the world can kind of make us feel. And so I just wanted to touch on that because I feel like you're saying like music is this opportunity to like express, what's happening and put what's happening in our world into words, and I love that. But it's any kind of musician's wellness, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of this podcast too, is like to be talking about why we do what we do, how we take care of ourselves in doing it, you know? And like I said, you know, this podcast is really meant to be a resource to musicians and creatives of all levels and genres so we can get out there and create and shake off the dust and the rust and all the crap that the world thrusts on us. And I think a great way to do that is by hearing stories from you and other musicians who speak honestly about their story and their struggles and their triumphs. And I'm just curious, you know, have you ever walked away from music? Have you ever felt like you were gonna just stop entirely? If so, why? What brought you back?
Yes. The answer is yes. I feel like I've been in one of those phases. Or actually, though, after any time I finish an album, there have been shorter periods between record albums. I feel the need for a great rest. And I don't know if that's just me and how I'm built and my history or what, but it's a lot of work.
Mhm.
That's true. But I feel like a deep rest. And by rest, I mean not performing out, not promoting, just not putting myself out there, not immediately putting another album out and sharing it. I don't sit down and say, I'm going to write something today. I write what I feel like writing. And so I feel like writing something most every day since the last album. It's mainly lyrics. It's been mainly writing poems or lyrics. And that is the difference since the last album for me is that I really haven't felt like singing and I really haven't felt like sitting down at the piano in a way that I used to. The piano all my life has been my refuge. The piano is when I was a kid was a savior for me, and singing too. And I felt pretty zonked and I didn't feel any urge to go to the piano and definitely did not feel like singing, and I've only had that happen one other time in my life, and it was when I was severely depressed in a really, really bad place, and that was yeah, I feel like I was given performance skills, and I felt like I was disappointing those skills me,
Mhm.
for the longest time, like, either because of my history, and I'm sure that's a part of it, or maybe I just never was made for performance, I kind of feel like, I like putting together the albums. To me, I like putting together it's like putting together a book. I think of an album as a single unit. I don't think of it as a bunch of songs, but I do want them to hold up on their own. I like making songs. It's a very private, wonderful thing for me. That's the biggest reward. Recording can be very tough, but I like getting them down and creating this thing and having that out there. And I think I'm a really pampered princess as far as what I want in live performance. If it's a perfect setup, like if I could just walk out like somebody who's actually famous and sit down and have everything ready for me, I'd probably like it a lot better. But the way my brain works, having to wear so many hats as a DIY artist and think of all that stuff and then perform and remember everything that you're doing and then remembering to thank everybody and all of the other stuff because you're wearing all those hats makes it a pretty miserable experience for me, honestly. I can have moments where I can just deaden myself to all the other stuff enough and just think of the music that I feel like I'm connecting with this really lovely audience that came to hear me, and I want to feel that. I mean, Ben is so good at that. Ben's an inspiration for me where that comes from, and I think it comes from him. I mean, it comes from his heart. He is a wonder to watch perform because he feels it the whole time. If he's been going 100 miles per hour for 3 months, he'll still give the same thing at the end of that 3 months to the audience that he does at the when he was fresher, maybe at the beginning. He's always present in the music, and I can get caught up in the, "Did I remember this?" and, "What's the set list?" and blah, 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 all this stuff. It's very different when I play in someone else's band. That's breezy. That's like, "Ah, this is fun?"
It's interesting because I you put that really, really succinctly, which is like performing is beautiful when that's all you're doing, when you're up there and you get to just share what you've created and
Yes.
that's your job. Like performing is awesome. Like you
Yes.
already have a sound guy, you already have somebody that helped you schlep your stuff and set it up. You already like
Mhm.
you have an in-ear monitor or like, somebody who's making sure that all your levels are spot on and you have somebody
Yes.
who's like getting the people to your show and you don't have to do the promoting and you're getting so you
Yeah.
know, what I mean, when you have to
Yeah.
do everything, it is
Yeah.
so miserable. But I think that's different than performing. That's being a promoter, that's being a, roadie, that's being a sound man, that's being the composer, that's being the bandmate, that's being the performer, that's being the showman, that's being the gracious person that also pays everyone. It's like that is so much to be responsible for. And I think that like it just helps me to hear that when you just like break it down to being like, I'm creating and sharing art and sharing it with other people, that actually is nice. I mean, it has some anxieties, of course, but trying to expect yourself to do all of those things and then like love it is like
Yeah.
a really tall order. So I think it's helpful to
Yeah.
kind of be like, why do I feel like I hate performing? And
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, it's not
exactly.
because I actually hate performing. It's because I hate doing 100 things at once.
Yeah, maybe so.
So
I know
maybe.
it's what everyone has to do. I know it's not like I'm some unique little flower that's having it harder than any other
No.
musician that I know, having to do all these things. I'm complaining even having had the help of my husband with lugging a
Yeah.
lot of
Same.
places, with band members who've been supportive and taken on jobs, with, you know, for heaven's sake, Ben, with my Run Tiny Human album release, pretty much did the whole thing.
Oh my
He
gosh.
I've never had that experience before. He organized and he was trying to make it better for me as hard as he could, and he did. He made it tremendously better, and it was one of the best presents and gifts of my life. Was to, I
Mhm.
mean, that was a huge, huge thing that he did, and it did make a difference. It really did help. But you're not going to expect that from people that you know and you love. Some people that I know, having said all of that, are really good at doing all the hats. I
Mhm.
don't get it. I'm like,
Mhm.
I thought of myself always as, oh, I can do any job. I can learn any job all my life. And I've had so many jobs and I have had to learn many jobs and different skills and things like that. And I hate wearing all those hats. They are that business person
Yeah.
kind of, they kind of get something out of being that businessy side.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Yeah. And I think maybe the point there too that I feel like I'm getting is that it's good to be willing to ask for help, to delegate roles, to, ask for people to support. Cause it sounds like, your husband and Ben and all these different people kind of like you've been able to thrive when you have people kind of coming in and helping you out and resource
My
the
sister
your
my
sister.
sister Katie,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm right there with you. I feel like
she's helped too.
when I feel like I'm willing to ask for help and I let my husband help me carry it with my keyboard and I like let somebody that runs the venue actually do the sound and I let somebody else do like, like figure out whatever other technical issue that I would never be able to figure out anyway. It's like when I can just say I'm sorry, I will find somebody to help out with this or I'm sorry I can't do it all and ask for help. All of a sudden it's like I think that maybe the illusion is that we have to all do these things ourselves, but really if we can find a team of people to help us who all can specifically take a task on so that we can do our job as performer because we're not always going to be the performer, right? Sometimes we're going to be the backup and sometimes we are going to be or sometimes I'm going to be the roadie or I'm going to be helping out with sound. But like when I'm the performer, asking someone else to help out with those things is okay. And I think that maybe and that's just a lesson I want to maybe take from this conversation is that asking for help and having realistic expectations of what I can and cannot do is actually going to make me love performing more.
I am terrible at asking for help,
Yeah.
and that is a good reminder for me, but I do worry that amongst the people, my fellow musicians and friends and the communities that I perform in, everybody's worn out.
Yeah.
Everybody's helped each other so much
Yeah.
that they're just worn to a nubbin. I hear about other countries. I have friends who live in other countries where they fund musicians and they financially support musicians as though it's an actual job or career
Love
that
that.
people have trained their whole lives for and spent money to learn. And it's a different world for them. I don't know how to tech people. I don't know to cough up some funds to go toward the arts and toward music and things like that because we can't even sell our music. I mean, music's supposed to be free. You're supposed to
I
just
know.
let it stream magically
I
on
know. I know.
Spotify and all these other things. So, how are you supposed to make money? I know most of us are not doing it, chief in mind, but it is a question that plagues
Oh,
me.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels like it's very difficult to do.
I think the more we can be asking the question and working on that problem, the better, because I'm right there with you. And everybody wants the arts. So it's time that everybody supports the arts in a way that makes it, financially
Yes.
sustainable. So I hope that that can be possible. And I'm on team. I'm on team musicians thriving. And
Yes.
like throwing out the whole starving musician bullshit because it's time for that story to end. But, you know, is there any nugget of inspiration or wisdom you can give to musicians out there who might be struggling with the inner critic or any level of performance anxiety? Could you speak to that sort of side? And, if you could reach one person with something that has been really meaningful and helpful to you, what would it be?
What I've always done for myself when I've got all this chaos going on in my head of everything I'm trying to remember because I'm wearing all those hats and a gig, and I always feel like I'm gonna barf, when I'm about to perform, and so there's that to contend with too. I tell myself to focus on the words, and if you're playing an instrument and you don't have words, I mean, I guess focus on putting that piece of music across. For me, focusing on the words brings me into the song and takes me out of myself. I have a job to do. I'm serving the song and I remember why I wrote the song. And if I'm remembering that, then I'm making an emotional connection with what I felt like when I was writing that song and where that came from. And that hits me as I'm playing. And I feel like I'm writing the song again a little bit. I feel like I'm in that place where I wrote that song and why it was important to me to put down these words and write music around it. Why did I do this? Why am I sharing it with anyone? It's a real joy for me or a deep, intense sort of satisfaction for me to write music. So if I can kind of get myself anywhere near that place and then I'm sharing it with people, it takes me out of the death spiral of, oh, I'm like, this section's really hard. Am I going to forget the notes? And I can't remember this lyric. What was it? What was it? What was it? And then you have to start to play all those things, all those crazy making things that we do here. That's like, let me
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. 100%. Gratitude is everything. It always comes back to gratitude, right?
Yeah.
And you chose to share a complex, deep, dark, and oceanic piece, Anemone, which listeners will get to hear at the end in its entirety after this episode. Can you just tell me real quick what the inspiration was behind this piece?
That was not autobiographical, but, it just basically bad love. Choosing to love a shiny, pretty thing or person that is not going to love you back, and you even know that. It's
Mhm.
just from the perspective of someone hopelessly loving this beautiful, spiny thing that's intent on stinging them. It's just about loving something that you can't help loving, but you probably should help loving because it's terrible for you.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful description. I can't wait for people to hear it. I listened to it several times last night. I was like, damn, it's like so rich and complex and like sort of haunting. And it's all just
Yay.
so, so good. Oh, and I love that
Thank
Ben
you.
was backing you up.
Usually I do my own harmonies, and I feel like that's not even a harmony, that's like a equal double vocal in
Mhm.
that song, and he did a beautiful job, and he
Oh,
plays viola too.
yeah. Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I cannot wait for people to hear it.
Thank you.
So how can people best get in touch with you?
My website I've had on hiatus because it switched servers and everything, and I'm not technological, so I'm sorry for people who've tried to go to my website, it's just broken. So they can find me on Facebook at Rachel Taylor Brown or go to Bandcamp and
Yeah,
look up
yeah.
Rachel Taylor Brown, and that's where all my music is. That's where if you wanna buy my music, that's the best place to do it.
Everyone go to Bandcamp and support musicians because Bandcamp
Yes.
actually allows you to make money on the music that you create.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you'll be able to find that in the show notes. So please go visit her music and buy her albums because they are so phenomenal. They're so rich, so complex, so important. So
Oh,
Anyway, yes, I love it. Well, I hope that people do get in touch with you. Rachel, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on Artistry with Heart and for sharing your insights and wisdom and heart with the world.
It has been fun, and you're a wonderful host. Thank you very much for having me on your great show.
Oh, thank you. Well, listeners out there, we hope you'll stay tuned for future episodes like this one. And if you heard anything that resonated with you or you want more of it, get in touch with Rachel, or you can join us and support us on Patreon, which helps us to continue to do what we do here on Artistry with Heart. You can also visit stephaniebernards.org/inspiration. And here you'll find journal prompts that are specific to the conversation that I just had with Rachel that will help you go deeper with your own artistry and your own musicianship and your own heart, which I hope that's why you're here. That's all for now. Until next time, be you and stay inspired. And now the full version of Anemone.
Oh, anemone, I know you are the one. You're the enemy, and so I will get stung. But you're so pretty in the awful things you've done. Oh, anemone, you're beautiful and gold, missing mercy and without a heart of gold. But I will love you even when we're very old. Oh, anemone, I know it makes no sense. All your suitors are just sitting on a fence. I'm the only anywhere near. When you whisper